I could see that my niece, Danny, looked like she was about to cry when she gave me something. It was just a picture of my brother, her dad, with his co-workers at a bar. "What's wrong, Danny? Why are you upset?" I asked. Before she could answer, my serious sister-in-law hurried in and said, "I've been looking for you, Danny. Come with me." She quickly took Jenny away. Left alone, I turned the picture over and found a message from my brother written on the back. It said, "If anything happens to me, please protect my daughter. My name is Alice. I'm 32 years old and work in my family's construction company. My brother, who is 10 years older than me, always worked hard and was expected to take over the family business. Everyone thought he would, including me. But after he finished high school, he started having more disagreements with our dad about how to run the company. My brother didn't really want to take over. He often said, 'I love being a carpenter, but that doesn't mean I want to inherit the business.' Then he told us he had met someone he wanted to marry, and he introduced us to Maggie. She was friendly and got along well with our family, but she never lived with us. 'I'm going to get married and move out,' he said. I asked, 'Aren't you going to take over the business? You know I don't get along with Dad, and I don't want to cause you any trouble.' He gently patted my head and replied, 'I promise I won't.' True to his word, he got married a few days later and moved out. However, he kept in touch and we would talk about everyday things. Dinner was great tonight. Maggie is a dietitian, so she makes healthy meals for me because of my high blood pressure," he would say. "Yeah, I've heard that a million times. You never get tired of bragging, do you?" I teased. As long as my brother was happy, that was all that mattered to me. A few years after he married, Jenny was born. From then on, we visited my brother and his wife sometimes. They looked really happy, and Jenny was growing up loved by both her parents. When Jenny turned 10, our family started talking about fixing our relationship with my brother. We all wished we could go back to the times when our family laughed together, but that hope was not meant to be. One day at work, I received a rare call from my sister-in-law. I usually heard from my brother, not her, so I was worried and quickly answered. "Hello, sister-in-law," I said. "Alice, it's good to hear from you, but listen carefully. Your brother, Jake, fell from scaffolding at work and is in the hospital. He slipped because of the rain." The news hit me hard and fast. I felt like time had stopped, and my mind went blank. I immediately called my parents, who were also at work, and we rushed to the hospital through the pouring rain. When we entered the hospital room, we saw my brother lying there, his skin pale. The moment I saw him, the reality of the call hit me, and I collapsed to the floor. "Bro," I managed to whisper, my voice so weak it scared me. A wave of sorrow washed over me. Next to his bed, my brother's wife was crying loudly, like a character in a sad movie. Her intense wailing made me hold back my tears and just stare at her, but I felt uneasy about how she was acting. Danny, my brother's daughter, stood beside her, looking down with a pale face. She wasn't crying, but she was shaking as if she was scared. "Danny, are you okay?" I asked, but it seemed she was too shocked by her father's death to answer. After the wake at our home, while everyone was lost in their grief, I quietly shed tears in a lonely corner of the porch. The photo on the memorial portrait looked recent. My brother appeared a bit tired, but he had a peaceful expression. I wondered if my brother had lived a happy life. As I thought about this, an image of Jenny came to mind. The last time I talked to my brother, he was so happy as he told me how much he loved taking his daughter, Danny, to amusement parks and zoos. Now, I knew Jenny must be having a hard time after losing her dad. Thinking about how she felt made my tears start to come again. Just then, I heard a familiar voice call out, "Sis." It was Jenny, her eyes full of tears. "Danny, what's wrong?" I asked, wiping my own tears and trying to stay calm. "Help me, I think I might be next," she said, biting her lip. I was about to ask her to repeat that when she handed me something that said, "If anything happens, I want you to give this to Alice," she said. My brother had said that. The item was a worn brown envelope, like she had been holding it for a long time. Just then, I heard a cold voice behind me. "What are you doing?" I turned to see my brother's wife, Maggie, with a serious look on her face. "I've been looking for you, Mama," Jenny said. Maggie grabbed Jenny's arm and quickly took her away before I could say anything. Maggie had always been friendly and kind, but she was acting very differently now. I understood that it was natural for her to feel this way after losing her husband, but Jenny also seemed a bit strange. Left alone, I opened the envelope and found an ordinary photograph. It looked like it was taken at a social gathering, showing my brother smiling with some coworkers. When I flipped the photo over, I saw my brother's handwriting. It said, "If anything happens to me, I want you to protect my daughter." I was shocked and just stared in surprise. I thought Jenny might be asking for help, and this photo could be important. I decided to call a friend, who was a police officer, and arranged to meet him the next day. Usually, the funeral would happen the day after the wake, but the crematorium wasn't available, so we had an extra day. This gave me time to find out more about my brother's death. The next morning, I arrived at our meeting place, and my friend was already waiting for me. "Sorry for calling you out of the blue," I said. "Don't worry about it. I was off duty." "What's up?" he replied. I explained everything that had happened, and he listened seriously. "From a cop's perspective, we can't act on this with just the evidence we have," he said. "I see," I replied, feeling a bit discouraged. "I'm sorry I can't help more, but remember, I'm here if you need to talk," he added. "Thanks, just talking about it helps me sort things out," I said. Even after leaving my friend, I couldn't stop thinking about the photo Jenny had given me. No matter how many times I looked at it, I couldn't figure out what it meant or what my brother's message was trying to say. I thought about asking Jenny directly for more information, but I worried that my sister-in-law might stop me again. Then an idea came to me. Maybe I could find clues in my brother's belongings. Feeling restless, I quickly went to my sister-in-law's house. "I'm sorry for bothering you when you're busy," I said to Maggie. "I'm just worried about you and Jenny. Thank you for coming all the way." "Jenny is in her room, but let's leave her alone for now. She's feeling down since her father passed away," Maggie replied, inviting me into the living room. Maggie's house was usually tidy and well-kept, but today it felt gloomy. I noticed that there was nothing of my brothers around, not even the family photo that had been there the last time I visited. It was as if my brother had never been there. Desperate to find something left by him, I looked around the room. Maggie brought me some tea and homemade pickles, but what caught my eye was a light purple bracelet on her wrist. It looked like a rosary and didn't seem to match either her or my brother's style. This made me feel uncomfortable. "Wow, these pickles are really salty," I said, quickly drinking my tea to wash it down. Maggie tilted her head and replied, "Really? I don't think so." Maggie, a dietitian, usually made delicious meals that my brother loved, so it was strange for her to serve something so salty. I started to wonder if she was giving my brother food that was unhealthy for him, especially since he had high blood pressure. Feeling uneasy and worried about Jenny, I said, "I'd like to talk to Jenny. She's in her room, right?" Just as I stood up to go to Jenny's room, Maggie said firmly, "No, I won't let you see her. I'm sorry, but you should leave. I'm busy preparing for the funeral." She grabbed my wrist and pushed me out into the hallway, throwing me out of the house. After being kicked out, I looked up at the sky, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, Jenny poked her head out of a second-floor window. She put her finger to her lips to signal me to be quiet, and then threw something down to me. It was a small key wrapped in cute memo paper. The note said, "The key to the shed. Hide it under the potted plant after you use it." I gave Jenny a thumbs up, and she nodded, closing the window gently. I quickly went to the backyard to avoid Maggie and used the key to open the shed. Inside, it was filled with my brother's belongings, and among them, I found a diary. Jake was a diligent person who had been writing in his diary since he lived at home. As I read through it, I found something shocking. Jake had noted that the food seasoning had become too heavy, and when he mentioned it to Maggie, She just brushed it off, saying, "Leave it to me, I'm a dietitian." He felt that she wasn't taking his health seriously, and he had been feeling worse lately. There was also a note about why he left a photo behind. I'll never forgive this. The next day, many people, including relatives and Jake's colleagues, gathered for the funeral. When Maddie took the microphone to give her speech, I stood up and interrupted her. "I have something I want you all to hear," I said, ignoring the surprised look on Maggie's face as I stepped forward. "Jake's death wasn't an accident." My words caused a stir in the hall, and Maggie looked stern. "What are you talking about?" "My husband slipped off the scaffold at work and fell," she protested. I held up Jake's diary. "Everything is written here." Maggie, who usually cooks well, started making heavily seasoned dishes, and Jake's health began to decline. "Isn't it strange to serve salty pickles and soup to someone with high blood pressure every day and insist he eat everything?" Maggie responded, "I don't know anything about that. I was careful with his meals every day." She was trying to act innocent. I then pulled out another piece of evidence. "This is a photo that Jake left for me." At first, I didn't understand its significance, but when I visited your house yesterday, I noticed someone in the photo was wearing a bracelet that matches the light purple bracelet you have on now. As I pointed to the person in the photo, everyone's attention shifted. "Mr. Johnson, you and Maggie were having an affair, weren't you? Even though Jake trusted you the most, why would you betray him like this?" The room buzzed with whispers, and Maggie glared at me with anger, while Mr. Johnson looked pale and nervous. Mr. Johnson was someone I recognized well. He had been a good friend of Jake since high school and had visited our home many times. As he wiped the sweat from his forehead, I noticed he was wearing the same bracelet as Maggie's. I could only imagine how much Jake had struggled, knowing that a colleague he trusted was having an affair with his wife, and that his life might even be in danger. That's why he couldn't tell me directly and left behind that photo instead. As I spoke to Mr. Johnson, I struggled to hold back tears. He broke down crying and held his head in his hands. "A diary and a bracelet can prove anything about an affair or my husband's death," Maggie interjected defensively. But I was ready for her response. "There's more evidence in the diary," I continued. "Jake checked your phone and saw your emails with Mr. Johnson. One of them said, 'Jake is in the way for us to be together. Let's get rid of him somehow.'" "That's a lie," Maggie shouted. "Is it?" "We can't find out by investigating," I said. "At first, it seems like you planned to take advantage of Jake's high blood pressure by serving him unhealthy meals to kill him slowly. But that would take too long. So, you decided to have Mr. Johnson cause a workplace accident instead. You planned to push him from a high place on a rainy day and then say he slipped." Maddie quickly pointed fingers at Mr. Johnson, trying to shift the blame onto him. He shook his head frantically, denying it. "Mr. Johnson, it was raining the day my brother died, wasn't it?" I pressed. He nodded slightly. "Normally, work would be stopped on a rainy day, so why didn't it stop?" I asked. "It was just a drizzle, and since we had a deadline, you suggested continuing the work. Jake trusted you completely, thinking you were his best friend." As the truth sunk in, someone in the room gulped nervously. Mr. Johnson then bowed deeply to Jenny, Jake's only daughter. "I was misled by her, and I did something terrible. I'm truly sorry," Mr. Johnson said, crying as he apologized. Jenny looked at him with sad eyes while Maggie continued to shout, "I don't know anything about it. I'm not guilty." "Even now, you submit the incriminating emails to the police, right?" I pressed. When Mr. Johnson offered his phone, it seemed like Maggie finally gave up. Then, police officers who had come to my brother's funeral arrested both of them and took them away. It was a relief to see them finally caught. After that, Maggie and Mr. Johnson were sentenced to long prison terms. Thanks to the lawyer I hired, Jenny was able to receive $100,000 from the Victims' Compensation Program, which helps bereaved families rebuild their lives. Jenny was in shock from everything that happened and lost her spirit for a while, but I adopted her as my child, and she started to smile again. I decided to shower her with love to fill the gap left by my brother.